Hello, this is Dr. Avent-Holt for Sociology 1101, and we have been talking so far about individual behavior and how to explain individual behavior, particularly focusing in on culture and kind of cultural norms and the ways in which these impact behavior. Today we're going to talk about a very important concept within sociology, power, and its relationship to what we call authority. And so we'll actually distinguish these two concepts in a few minutes. So what we'll do is we'll talk about power. I'll have an example to illustrate power that'll kind of run through our conversation, and then you're going to watch the video on the Milgram experiments. And then I'll have you write a short writing assignment on that video and the issue of power and authority therein. So what is power? When sociologists talk about power, we often connect it back to one of our important kind of grandfathers, if you will, of sociology, this guy. Pictured here, Max Weber, and you see it's Max. It looks like Weber to you, but he's a German sociologist, so we pronounce it Weber, like it's a V, so Max Weber. And Weber argued that power is the ability to get others to do what you want, even if they resist you. Right? So the key idea here is that when we talk about power, and there's lots of different ways to talk about power and that we think about power, but sociologically speaking, at least for this class, when we talk about power, what we're talking about is a person, an individual, or a group, it could be either one, a group's power or an individual's power is in their ability, their capacity to get others to do what it is that they want them to do, even when others might not want that, and even if they, importantly, if they try to resist doing what those in quote-unquote power are asking them to do. So when you think about that, a useful place to start, you can see I've talked a lot about using the classroom as an example. You can ask yourself, who has power in the classroom? And very clearly, I think you'll suggest that the teacher or the professor, whoever's at the front of the classroom, the teacher, the professor, the instructor, is the person in the classroom who has power. Why? What is it about that person that tells us that they have power? Well, if you think about all the different things that I as a professor require you to do that you may or may not want to do. I can require you to write papers, which I do, require you to take quizzes or exams. I can force you to basically sit and listen to me talk or come to class as a requirement. All of those things are things that I can make you do even if you try to resist. And so if you try to resist, if you try to, let's for example, talk over me while I'm trying to talk, I can send you out of the classroom. If you refuse to take exams, I can have you dropped from the class, right? And this is not me waving around power in front of you, but I think these are things you already know, right? That is, the professor has power in a classroom because they have the capacity to make students do what it is the professor wants them to do, even if those students resist, right? And students, you can see, don't have power over each other because a student can't make another student write a paper or take an exam, and really can't even make them stop talking in class. It has to go through the person who has the power, which in this context is the instructor. Okay, so that's Weber's version of power. But sociologists since Weber, and to some extent Weber himself as well, distinguish between two real forms of power. Right? So the power we just talked about is coercion. Right? It is I have power to the extent that I can make you do things even if you try to resist. Right? I can coerce you into doing these things, and you can't really stop me. You can't resist me. But Weber also talked about something that he referred to as authority, and others since him have called legitimate power. And what this is power that is seen as justifiable or acceptable to subordinates. That is, those who are in a position where they have to obey the particular person or group in power, see that as not a problem, right? See that as acceptable, right? See that they should do what those in authority ask them to do, right? And so in this way, authority itself actually works because we allow it to. Right? We allow those authority figures to tell us what we can and cannot do. So let's go back to that classroom example that I laid out. Why do I have power in the classroom? Well, let's ask this question. Who even thought about challenging my power, right? Who has ever walked into a classroom and thought, well, I'm going to tell this professor that they can't tell me what to do, that I don't really care about their syllabus, that I'm not going to complete these quizzes, write these papers, whatever it might be, right? This almost never happens. I can't think of any case in which it has happened because students who walk into a classroom accept that the professor has authority to tell them certain things that they're going to have to do. Tell them that they have the authority to tell them they're going to take quizzes, they're going to write papers, so on and so forth. And you can imagine, actually, it's important to think about this as well. You can imagine a classroom in which that is not organized that way, where the professor doesn't come in with a syllabus, but that the students and the professor together construct the syllabus. This would be a perfectly reasonable way to organize a classroom that would undermine that authority that the professor has over the syllabus itself. There would be a more democratic way to run a classroom, perhaps, but we don't organize classrooms that way, and most students walk into a class assuming that they are going to do what it is the professor asks them to do. Right? But that, again, is not inevitable. But this illustrates for us the authority that people, that professors in this context or others have over individuals, right? By the fact that even without challenging it, people simply accept them having power over them. So authority is typically institutionalized into a hierarchy, right? That is, modern power operates through authority, operates through this idea of legitimate power, and this is sort of crystallized within giant bureaucracies. So Weber loved to talk about the state, right? Governments, for example, as places in which authority resides, right? Because we typically wake up every day, right, and we accept that we're going to have these people in Congress who are going to get together and they're going to make laws, right? And they will pass these laws and we will follow these laws. And the Supreme Court is going to have the power to determine if these laws are constitutional. And when the Supreme Court, as it has recently done, you've seen in the last few days, says that this is unconstitutional, those who may have supported the law step back and accept the authority that the Supreme Court has to enforce these or to justify these laws or not, right? So everyone is accepting that we have these groups of individuals in the state who have the authority, the power to tell us what to do, right? And we don't question that they should have that authority. Giant corporations are no different, right? It's another area, area of bureaucracy where we see power residing, where we see authority residing, right? Where we accept that our employers have the right to tell us when to come to work, how long we're going to work, to set wage rates for us, to determine who's going to get promoted into what positions, right? So we're investing authority into a very small group of people at the top of these corporations, and we accept that, right? We accept that they're going to have the power to do that, right? And we've already talked about this a little bit in schools and colleges, but of course colleges have these giant bureaucratic structures that, again, we all accept. You accept that professors have authority over you. I accept that the chair of my department has the power to tell me what classes I'm going to teach and when I'm going to teach them. I accept that the dean of our college has the power to distribute funds and to make all kinds of decisions as well. So we seem to accept these forms of power. Okay, now that we've sort of talked and laid out what power is, I want to talk a little bit about the next assignment and have you watch this video. Okay, so you've already read for today about the Milgram experiments, and I'm going to have you watch this film, Obedience, on the Milgram experiments. And I want you to note a few things as you're watching the video. It's going to be about 45 minutes long, so get out some popcorn and kick back to watch it. So you want to ask yourself when you're watching this, what were the main findings of the initial experiment that Milgram conducted? And you can find that as well in the readings, but it's important. You can find that in both places, but you'll see it highlighted in the video as well. And then you want to ask yourself a couple of questions. A key question is, well, when you watch, you'll be watching people actually conducting the shock experiments, and you'll see lots of discomfort on their part, nervous laughter, hesitancy, and yet many of them you'll find continue on with the experiment. So why is it that you think people continue to inflict pain despite their own discomfort and nervousness and concern with it? And then at the end of the video, they will talk about sets of experiments in which they varied some of the conditions. And I want you to ask, what are the conditions under which people are likely to resist the authority of the experimenter, right? And think about it in the context of the experiment, and then think about it broadly. What are the conditions under which people are likely to resist individuals or groups in authority? And so then after you watch this video, think about these questions. You want to go to the Dropbox where I'll have writing assignment 3 posted, and follow the instructions for that writing assignment. So get you some popcorn, kick back and watch the video. Go to the course website on Desire to Learn under the Videos tab, and you'll see where I have a link for you to be able to watch the video on YouTube. So get some popcorn and have a good time.